right, let's shift focus now and talk about Lionel Messi, or the lack thereof. Lionel Scaloni has announced his squad for the CONMEBOL World Cup qualifiers in September, and Herc shock, still no Leo Messi. There's a couple of surprise call-ups there that we're going to get to right now, but Argentina set to play against Chile, and another rematch against Colombia of that very hotly contested Copa America final. But again, speaking of that final, that was the last time that we saw Messi. Right now, we have that image ingrained in our head of his sole and ankle and of him, in tears on the sidelines, Herc. And since then, we've not seen him for Inter Miami. He still hasn't even been able to fully train either. And now we know if it's one thing that he would always be ready for is to suit up in that albiceleste shirt. But still no Messi. How worried are we?
Well, not as worried as Inter Miami or Major League Soccer should be worried. And listen, it's 2 months ago? It's almost been 2 months? Is that what we're going on? And if you saw that injury, if you saw the way that ankle turned inward, it was a pretty nasty injury. And we know Lionel Messi doesn't just come out to come out. Like, if he comes out, it's because he can't go. This is a man that relishes playing any type of game in an Argentina jersey. He was in tears while he was on that bench. It's a tough situation right now, because the lack of transparency here is not only alarming, but it's upsetting. It's upsetting because Inter Miami is playing with the whole set of rules that the rest of Major League Soccer doesn't have to play by. They have to disclose their injuries, their timelines. Well, not Inter Miami, he's out. Timeline, we will wait and see. We don't know what's going on. We know the type of player he is, the beast he is, the competitive beast he is. If he can play, he will play. If he could play with Argentina, he would be there. So the fact that he's not with Argentina, I'll get to Argentina in a second, doesn't worry me too much. It worries me for Inter Miami, because the measuring stick for Messi wasn't Inter Miami, it wasn't Leagues Cup, it was Argentina. So now I'm starting to think to myself, how serious is this injury? And how worried should we be about him going forward? And when it comes to Argentina, I can't think of life after Messi for Argentina. You saw what life after Diego Armando Maradona was like for Argentina and how much they suffered. This could be scary. And I say this with all due respect, because we're talking about the singular most important player probably in the history of the game. In my eyes, the best footballer that's ever played. Now it's post-Messi and post-Di Maria, because when Messi wasn't on the field, it was the likes of Angel Di Maria who was doing it. It was Angel Di Maria in the Copa America in that facilitating role. It was him pulling the strings. Think of a time when you've seen Argentina without these two playmakers, and that time wasn't successful. So I'm a little bit worried. This team can change a lot without Lionel Messi. How much going forward remains to be seen, but certainly the glory days will be behind him with these two gone.
Well, as you said then, 100%, are we looking at, because we've not had a timeline, and I know Lionel Messi is that type of player that you just kind of let them do what they need to do, and you just trust and know that when they are ready, they will definitely come back. But are we thinking that maybe it will be the end of the year before we even see him? And then if so, what kind of Messi will we get for Inter Miami?
No, I think listen, by all accounts, everything we hear, Tata Martino told us all players will be available at the end of the month. What available means remains to be seen. Available to be cleared for training is one thing. Available for games is another. If you don't have Lionel Messi, forget Inter for a second, forget Inter Miami, but Argentina. He's the one singular player that still makes Argentina different. And I say this with all due respect to the World Cup champions, the defending Copa America champions. When you talk about Argentina, you think about Lionel Messi. Until the day he decides he is retiring, he's the single most important player on that team. Angel Di Maria was the one guy who was there for it all. While Messi was the flag bearer, Angel Di Maria was the guy putting the nail in the coffin of the opponents. Copa America final, goal scorer, and won them the game. World Cup final, goal scorer, won in the game. In the Copa America, this tournament, when it wasn't Messi there to help him, it was Di Maria in his final tournament, final games for Argentina, helping lift up that trophy. I don't want to say this team is not going to fight for titles, but it won't be the same. When Argentina has lifted trophies, they've had special players. Mario Kempes, Diego Maradona, Lionel Messi. Right now, no Messi, no party.
I mean, 100%. We're talking about Lionel Messi, who's single-handedly the biggest game changer in the world. And I mean, we saw it. We lived it at that World Cup in Qatar, where Argentina had some sketchy moments, especially even in the group stages. I remember even watching them up against Australia. And once again, it was once when Messi just found that right pass, found that right space, that the rest of them just kind of came alive and knew the job that they had to do. And someone like Angel Di Maria is definitely going to be sorely missed there. But if we have a look at the starting 11 from that final, I believe from the Copa America final, because we're now thinking of life after Messi, life after Di Maria, who else on this team do you think has what it takes to carry that mantle, Herc, at least now?
Well, those are
forget it.
Those are some pretty big shoes to fill. I'm not gonna put that evil. I'm not gonna put that evil on Lautaro Martinez or Julian Alvarez, who are very, very good forwards. But certainly compared to an Angel Di Maria or to Lionel Messi, much more of a workman-like attitude. And I say that respectfully because these are two very good game-changing individuals. I really think you're struggling to find that flag bearer, struggling to find that special player. They're very good players, and they can win titles, different types of titles, absolutely. But that different player that in the world is considered the most elite of players, when Messi goes, along goes that mantle, that title that comes with it. It's not going to be a one person takes over for Messi. In the same way, probably that we thought nobody would take over Diego Armando Maradona, and it took, what was it, in 86 when he lifted the World Cup, it took what? Another 36 years for him to do it again, for them to do it again. It might be quite some time.
I feel like that was definitely an unfair question for me to throw out there, because we know that Messi is one of one. We're talking about a generational talent, someone that we probably, it's going to take a while before we see someone like him again, like Diego Maradona. But at least in going forward, Argentina do have to start thinking of life without Messi. You look at Lautaro Martinez, as you said, you see Julian Alvarez there. Julian himself has already completed football at his age. Do you see at least someone there or a system there that Scaloni can probably build the team around?
Yeah, I think it's Scaloni in that system. I love what Scaloni has done. And I hate when people use Scaloni to reference, how change can happen. You're talking about the exception to the rule, and you're talking about a guy that, and I say this respectfully, inherited a team with Lionel Messi, the ultimate game changer. But certainly when you see how pragmatic, how difficult they are to play against each other, or against, and how they're willing to suffer, and they get through the suffering and win. Because you mentioned that Australia game, I thought Australia did enough to tie that game, force overtime, and take it beyond that. You look at them losing to Saudi Arabia. You look at them going to overtime versus the Netherlands. You look at that France game and how they let that go to penalty kicks and still pulled it out. This team knows how to suffer and win. They did it in the Copa America as well. Whether it was the first one or the second one, this team has that willingness to suffer about them, and they're battle-hardened. And they've got players that are just so difficult. Let's say you leave Messi out of this. By the way, they did look better without Messi in that Copa America final against a very good Colombia team. You leave Messi out of this, I really feel that could be the end of Julian Alvarez as a starter on this team, because he was there to be that workman-like player for Messi. And when he wasn't there, the one player who was better suited for this team was Lautaro Martinez. And Lautaro is an excellent player. He may not seem like it, but this man is a goal scorer on all facets. You see what he did at Inter. Inter won the league last year by 19 points to their second place opponents, which were from Milan. And much of that was because Lautaro Martinez was the man, the MVP in Serie A. And we saw it at Copa America. It didn't matter if he was coming on as a starter or off the bench. He was scoring goals. We didn't see that at the World Cup because he was injured, a bum ankle, but he's certainly a player that can take over that goal-scoring mantle. But when we talk about the big boys, when we talk about the big moments, these two are cut above the rest.
Lautaro Martinez almost sometimes reminds me of a Rodrigo at Real Madrid. It's just such an unsung hero, but when there's a clutch moment for a little bit of magic, best believe they will be finding it. So we will see. But like I said, as we looked at the squad that Scaloni pulled out There are a couple of surprises there. And what do you think of this call-up? Tati Castellanos, Valentin Castellanos, the forward at Lazio, he got called up now. And it's so interesting because his only experience with Argentina is actually in a CONMEBOL pre-Olympic tournament. And look, this probably shouldn't come as much of a surprise to anyone because we know that this Argentina team is so stacked. But Herc, what do you make of his call-up?
I was a bit surprised. And listen, two CONCACAF call-ups here, or connected call-ups. You have Guido Rodriguez, ex-Club America, Liga MX, who now plays in West Ham, who was at Real Betis, who gets his call-up. He was part of the Argentine squad that went to the World Cup in 2018. So comes back into the fold. And Tati Castellanos. And listen, Tati Castellanos has been on this show, and he's spoken about the possibility of going to a World Cup. It was prior to the 2022 World Cup. Things didn't happen, didn't go his way. I'm very surprised because I know who Tati Castellanos is. The majority of people who watch his show know of him from his NYCFC days and how good of a forward he is. A game changer. He goes to Girona where he scored double-digit goals, 13, but his coming out game was against Real Madrid where he scores a poker. That's 4 goals against Real Madrid. Not just anybody can do that. There's a certain talent that comes with it. So you would have expected the next step. The next step comes in a big transfer to Lazio, but he's under Ciro Immobile. He's the backup to Ciro Immobile, who's a legendary Lazio striker. He doesn't really play that much. He scored 4 goals last season. He played over 30 games, but the majority of those were substitute appearances. So you would have thought, well, another player that gets kind of lost in the mix, the Serie A defending. And then this week happens. They play against Venezia, and I know it's Venezia, but he's a starter. Ciro Immobile is now Besiktas. He's now in Turkey. He's the de facto starter. He's the guy with the responsibility, the 9. He scores a goal and has an assist. And all of a sudden, he ends up on this call-up, and I'm thinking to myself, what? Wait, where? And I look at the other field of forwards. And really right now, there are only 2 9s, actual 9s. Not wingers, not offensive midfielders, not those different hybrid players, but just pure 9s that are in the mix. And it's Julian Alvarez and Lautaro Martinez. And the fact that there is no Messi forces Scaloni to have to look elsewhere of what life after Messi will be. In comes Tati Castellanos, a player that's, to me, much a 9.5 when he doesn't have the ball in the final third, and a player that when you give him the ball can operate as a 10, but when he's in the box, he's a complete 9. It's a different profile, a striker, that he can use, much like Julian is, but he's a goal-scoring threat. So this really, really excites me for Tati, and I was surprised, but pleasantly surprised.
Pleasantly surprised indeed. And maybe we will be to see how Argentina play without Leo Messi, at least for these next 2 World Cup qualifiers. One being, like I said, a rematch against Colombia, I believe, in Colombia. What do we have to do to take the show there? Because, oh, that is going to be spicy.
Gonna get me divorced.
Speaking of spicy, the boys on ESPN FC and K are always spicy. You can catch them. It's on every day of the week on ESPN+.